Government is not reason. Government is not eloquence. Government is force. And like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. My name is Daniel Happney, and this is The Real Story. Tonight, the theme that I wanted to bring to you was, what happens when good men do nothing? That's the thought. I want to let that sink in twice. What happens when good men do nothing? So I was going to start off tonight's show anyway with a little bit of news. Here's some good news. State sovereignty. Remember, it's the United States? Do you remember it was the states that created the federal government? Does all this ring bell in any civics class you took? You know that, gee, a group of states, disparate and separate, got together and said, oh, let's start with the 13 states, 13 colonies, and we'll make a government. Okay? So it's the United States. So why that's important is part of the thing, if you read the Constitution, the states kept a lot of the rights and a lot of the powers. They didn't give them to the Fed. Now, if you've been watching our government now for years and years, you'll notice that our federal government keeps getting bigger, keeps stealing, taking more of your money. I was going to say stealing. I'll slow down. It is thievery when you find out it's crooks. But where I'm going with it is it was the states that created the federal government. And so what we have now, something very interesting in the news, and that is there's 29, count them, 29. They're moving to 30. States that are actually right now in their state houses, okay, writing and passing bills that when I say redefined, bang, imprint the state sovereignty. And they're actually saying back to the federal government, and the reason they're doing this is, hey, if you do gun confiscation, we're not going to, we're not part of it and stuff. We're not going to do that. If you turn around and do, the FEMA camp thing, we're going to round up all these people, we're not going to be part of it. Okay? Unjust wars, not going to be part of it. Anything that's unconstitutional, the states are now reasserting their sovereignty, saying, we're sovereign states. We made you. The federal government didn't make them. So anyway, that's interesting news. A lot of you viewers probably aren't aware of that. But if you look at like Washington State, Oklahoma, I want to say Florida's looking at one, Maryland, I could go through the list. Very interesting. Arizona, Texas, of course. When I say of course, at least, there are some Texans down there. Unlike the cheerleader from Yale, remember Bush? He was the previous president. A cheerleader at Yale put on a pair of boots and told you he was a Texan because he told you got to watch out for terrorists. Well, with that in mind, I want you to consider anyway in this news thing, in this week's news, that it's important that states do this because state sovereignty, okay, is very important. Here in Massachusetts, we're going to have to motivate our people to realize that, hey, you know what? If it's unconstitutional, it's against the law, we're not going to do it. Remember the Fourth Amendment, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, all this stuff? How about the 13th? No more slavery. No more involuntary servitude. Well, it's going to be the states who stand up to the Fed, and that's the way it should be. And that's just the way it is, and that's very, very good news. So we're starting off with some upbeat news. That was a little bit of news for you, and that is that states now are actually drafting and passing, sovereignty bills that say, hey, we're going to maintain our sovereignty. We're not going to do things that are unconstitutional, even if you direct us to. That's very, very good. Because if you remember back in the Bush administration, just like today's Obama administration, there were a lot of things that were done illegally, and we found out we had crooks in government. Yeah, what else is new? And I guess we still do. We're going to go into that. Other things we have for you. This is interesting because, pretty soon it's going to be tax time, April 15th. And remember there's a guy with a badge and a gun, and he's going to say, hey, you got to pay your taxes. The interesting thing is, does Rahm Emanuel pay taxes? That's right, that dual citizen, chief of staff of the White House now, does he pay taxes? Has he paid his taxes? Remember Daschle was going to get on the cabinet? But gosh, he couldn't because why? He was a tax cheat. Yeah, he didn't pay his taxes. And then you look and you got Timothy Geithner. That's right, the guy from the private banking cartel, the New York City branch of the Federal Reserve, owned by foreigners. Yeah, you don't even own it. Not part of our federal government, or maybe you think Federal Express is part of our federal government. So anyway, Timothy Geithner, head of the New York City Federal Reserve, that's the one that runs all the other feds, that creates your currency out of nothing, he doesn't like to pay his taxes either. Why is it that these guys, these criminals, don't pay their taxes, yet they get to tell you that you have to pay yours? And if you don't, woe be you out there who don't pay your taxes. Because I've seen what happens. I saw what happened up in New Hampshire. You probably don't remember it, but there was what? Mr. Brown. That's right. Ed and Elaine. What happened to them? They used helicopters from Homeland Security. Boy, is Homeland Security part of the Internal Revenue Service? That was kind of weird, huh? And also snipers, you know, in ghillie suits. That's where you wear the special suit with all the stuff hanging down off it so you can't be seen, you can sneak around. Yeah, you need snipers in your yard. But I wonder, why is it that the people in the Obama administration don't have to pay their taxes, but you slaves, people out there do? Kind of weird, huh? I found out that it's 62% of Congress doesn't pay taxes. Why is it that you have to? Oh, and once again, you called your congressman and you said you didn't want the first banker bailout, yet they did it anyway, and the House of Representatives turned it down, and then the Senate took another bill, gutted it, put the bailout thing in it, and sent it back to Congress, and what 57 congressmen changed their votes. And that's how how does it work? Bankers get thousands of dollars, the American people get pennies. Yeah. You think this was set up by the bankers for the bankers? Should we get back to that private banking cartel called the Federal Reserve? It's a system, you know. It's a system to enslave you. Hey, when you take your dollar bill, take a look at it. Take a look at the back. Rather interesting signs we get on it. But take a look at the front now of your dollar bill. What does it say? That's a banknote, isn't it? Who is this bank that doesn't have to pay taxes? I got to ask you, does the Federal Reserve have to pay any taxes? Let me check. Oh, guess they don't. Boy, I think it's Section 8A or whatever that says, boy, in the Federal Reserve Act, they don't have to pay any federal taxes. Why should they? You know, they just get to make interest off you for nothing, from nothing, and for nothing, but they get your money, interest, huh? Okay, so anyway, they don't have to pay federal taxes, and they don't have to pay state taxes, and they don't have to pay local taxes. So this private banking cartel that issues your currency out of nothing, thin air, okay, that creates all this. You didn't have any money, you were in deficit, weren't you? Your government was in deficit, your economy was in deficit, yet you created trillions and trillions of dollars. Well, for my little this week's moment of Zen thing, since we're talking about trillions of dollars, I'm going to jump to a clip that I want you to see. Here's Donald Rumsfeld, the guy who poisoned you when he was working for Searle Corporation with aspartame. Yeah, well, he was your Secretary of Defense, and here's where he says trillions are missing from the Pentagon. And after you watch this, ask yourself this question. Out of a Pentagon that has 5 sides, why did they hit the side that had the bean counters on it? The accountants. And what were they doing? Trying to find missing trillions that your Secretary of Defense said the day before, September 10th, were missing. So anyway, here's a little bit on the Pentagon for you, just because you need a little 9/11 just to wake up every now and then.
I get tired of saying that defense is to be made an excuse for wasting dollars. I don't believe we should pay 1 cent for defense more than we have to.
I seriously question an increase in the Pentagon budget in the face of the department's recent Inspector General's report. How can we seriously consider a $50 billion increase in the defense budget when DOD's own auditors say the department cannot account for $2.3 trillion in transactions in 1 year alone?
It is, I was going to say terrifying. It is such a monumental task. I have met with 2 former officials of the Pentagon who served in the budget and controller and those areas. And I've mused over the fact that I've read some of these things and asked what they thought.
We process nearly 10 million paychecks a month. 10 million times to get things screwed up. I've had my pay screwed up 6 times since I've been in the department, and it's really bad when you screw up your boss's pay.
I doubt, to be honest, that people inside the department are going to be capable of sorting this out. I have a feeling it's going to take some folks from outside to come in and look at this and put in place a process that over a period, and I regret to say, but I've seen how long things take. I think it's going to take a period of years to sort it out, and I think it'll probably take the cooperation of the Congress to try to get the system so that you can actually manage the financial aspects of that institution rather than simply report on things that have happened imperfectly.
There's more oversight over the Head Start program than there is over the entire military budget.
It's a terrible record, and it's preposterous that the Defense Department doesn't know what's happened to this money.
This situation's a disgrace. It tells me that we can't meet our constitutional obligations to the taxpayers of our country to make sure that things are honestly and legally spent.
We're told major cuts in education programs, and then we read, well, you know, $500 million is paid per year that isn't owed.
It is an incredible thing that we arm the world and then turn around and come to Congress and say, look at all these weapons out there. They're almost superior to ours. They're comparable to ours. Well, of course they are. They're ours. We sold them to them.